The fourth critical choice I made was to create community and belonging. And oh my gosh, like that is infused in almost everything we're talking about here when I think about the impact that you've made on others within their community and with the sense of belonging. But I want to bring this to you personally.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I was 30 years old and looked around and I was like, oh, I'm friendly with everyone. I'm friends with no one. I still didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And I learned that in order to belong, I had to actually create it, which I believe it's something that you have to create. It takes action. For you, what I know through our conversation, that there have been times in which you didn't feel like you belonged, which I think sometimes is hard for people to wrap their arms around when they see you and they know you and they hear you. Oh my God, you're everywhere. You speak at conferences, you're on podcasts, you're in boardrooms, like you own the place. Have you felt not belonging? And what does that feel like?
Yeah, I felt it a lot. You know, that this was another one. You ask tough questions, Trish. I'll just say it.
Oh my God. Well, I'll take that as a compliment from you, because if this has you thinking about things that you normally don't have an opportunity to think about, that's a gift to me.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, as a woman in executive leadership, I have a lot of peers that I reach out to, and we talk about this. How even still in this day, it's rarefied air. There are very few women in boardrooms. There are very few women executives in companies. Even in beauty, where I was operating in my last role, you go to the beauty events, and most of the people sitting on the stages are men. And it's not for lack of trying. They all, are very committed, and, we're trying to figure out how to get more women involved and get more women at the executive levels. But for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. And becoming a mom so late in my life made me realize that a big part of the reason why is still the priorities and expectations that we set for ourselves as women that are a little different than how men still think about it. And, I'm in sort of a flipped relationship where my husband's the stay-at-home dad. That's becoming more and more common, and it's opening up pathways for women. But you're often the only woman, and it's like, how do you connect? So you hear like old school guys talking about how in the companies that they ran, what they would do after board meetings and things like that. And it's not things that necessarily women are going to want to go and do, or that would be comfortable if you're the only woman there. And so there is a sort of gender piece with this.
Yep.
But even beyond that, I will say that executive leadership can be very isolating. So statistically, they say that people marry people they either went to school with or they worked with. And it's because that's where you spend time with them and you can build a depth of relationships. But as you're growing in a career, and particularly when you grow quickly in a career, you get to a point where people are going out socially, but they don't necessarily want their quote unquote boss going with them. And so you have a social sort of stratus in a company that you're sort of a tangent to, but you're not necessarily engaged in as deeply. And that's where your thing about being friendly with everyone and friends with no one. I would say that hasn't been an unusual position for me to find myself in, that I will go to breakfast or lunch with any member of my company, any level. I love doing it. It's something that I saw my best mentors doing. I always remember Bob Anton from VCA Antech telling me I love skip gap. I didn't even know what it meant. But what it meant was he likes to go talk to everyone at the company so that he really understands what people are experiencing, and he can modify the culture to make sure that experience is great for everyone. And so it was a really interesting thing to hear at that stage of my career, something that I had strived to do, but that I became more mindful of even so after hearing his very direct comment about it. But what struck me about this is how, as you get older, you realize that the people that are in your life that have fallen away, and how you don't necessarily prioritize those relationships. And some of the best relationships that I still have are from all the companies, or from Curves, because I think we all sort of built that thing together. I was there for 15 years and we're all still Facebook friends. But it made me think, gosh, I need to make a day trip to Waco and go actually see these people face to
Right.
face, because I
Right.
haven't done that in so long. Even seeing you and Jenny,
Oh my
it
gosh.
makes me realize you have to make it a priority. But it's one where this one just struck me as I'm not sure I have the definitive answer to this yet. So I
Mhm.
think you've challenged me a bit here to think about, how do I get those true friendships back where maybe I have let those kinds of things go. But the belonging part of it, I think, though, it is harder. People say it's lonely at the top. There is no top, by the way. Everybody has a boss, no
Yeah.
matter how
Yeah.
high.
Right. Right. You know that.
But
Yeah.
it does get interesting as you move up in leadership, how hard it is to really connect with people on a personal level that is as meaningful to you as it is for them.
Hmm.
Like, you can do kind things for them, but they're not necessarily going to want their boss in, you know.
Now, how about this? How does it feel to belong?
Yeah. That is the thing. I think if I miss anything in my career, the moment of belonging that was the most meaningful to me was in the early days of Curves, when we were such a big
Mm.
company with so many women. So my role at the conferences, I would always give sort of the operations talk. So you have your piece that you do there, but then we would do a party at that brand. And because it was all women and it was so large, it would be thousands of women in this big, like a, what do you call it? Like a big conference center. And we would have a
Yeah.
DJ and play the music from our generation, and everyone would just dance and dance and dance. And I mean, I would say that, there were, probably a couple thousand women and maybe, 20
Wow.
guys. It was like that kind of a dynamic, because they didn't bring their husbands, they brought one another. And we were so connected in this mission of supporting one another and supporting the members and supporting the other franchisees. And it was so genuine. And you could just feel that we had something in common that ran very, very deep. And that party was always so fun. And we would run it. We would run it up until the very end. And then my job often was to close down the party. And I would go tell them to play We Are Family was usually the last song. And you'd get up there and tell them to play the song, and they would shut down the party. And it's like, I just remember just the feeling of it, of everybody feeling genuinely that there was a family there, and there's nothing like it. And I think I'm blessed to have my family, to feel belonging there, to feel my husband's family, which is rare to have in-laws where you feel that, but to have that in a company where it was that deep and that genuine, I think is rare.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Choose and Become interview series. To check out more episodes, go to www.trishkendall.com/podcast, or go to any of your favorite podcast channels, including YouTube, under Trish Kendall Speaks, and you'll find this interview and more. Choose and become.